Pastor Adolfo Chardo, how you doing today, bro?
I'm blessed. And actually, you have to make one correction in that introduction.
What is it?
Next time you're going to introduce me, you also have to make sure you include that I am also part of the #1 fan club in the world,
Stop it.
Anthony Aquino
Stop
fan
it.
club.
Stop
I am
it.
the president of that fan club.
Stop it. People are gonna actually believe you, so you better cut the cap. Cut the cap.
I'm definitely glad to be here, and thank you for inviting me. It's an honor.
Thank you, man. For those who do not know you, if I wanted to get a sense of who you are, and I wanted to do it through the lens of your earliest days. How was your childhood? What about your upbringing should I know if I wanted to get a sense of who Adolfo is?
Oh, man. I think there's a lot there. I definitely had parents who loved me, even though we had our challenges. I was in and out of the foster care system, and that taught me a lot. I have 2 brothers and 1 sister that I love dearly, that we're extremely close. And then my best friends, I'm 38 years old now.
38?
38. And some of my
You don't look a
closest-
day older than 15, bro.
It's the Blackanos. Yeah, they're plantains. Yeah. And some of my closest friends since I was 7 years old, I still have today.
Wow.
And so I would say what helped made me who I am is my community, my family, a lot of the experiences that I've gone through as a young person, and my interests, right? Really, makes me part of who I am. And then my upbringing in church too, which came a little bit later on in my childhood, but it's all part of me.
So when you mention siblings and you mentioned the foster care, when you say siblings, you're talking blood related siblings or foster siblings?
Oh no, definitely blood.
Okay.
I do have. I still remember my foster siblings. I haven't maintained any of those relationships, but every now and then I still think about them. You know, and I even think about some of the challenges that they've gone through with their families, and I don't know whether or not their families have been restored like mine, but I pray that they've gone through that experience.
So if we were to go deeper there, you say you have parents that loved you. And for those who do not know, we eventually gonna get into the whole leadership, your ministry and all that. But sometimes we focus so much on what we do now, and we forget how much of our past shapes who we are today. And in trying to understand, even the way you preach now, your passion for God, how you give yourself to church, I wonder, what was it to you as a person, as a kid that was in and out of the foster system? What is the most challenging thing during that? And how did that play a part in your character today?
I think that's an excellent question. One of the challenging things is, and I learned early, is that not everything's going to be under your control. And not only
Huge.
that you're going to go through certain circumstances or situations in life that are not your fault.
So good.
Yeah, it wasn't my fault that I was in the foster care system.
Wow. Yeah.
I was there because of other people's choices. And I learned that the decisions of others, whether you're involved in those decisions or not, can have a huge impact on your life.
That's so true.
Yeah, and I learned that at a very early age. And it's a tough lesson to learn. It's not something that's easy. And even though you could probably tell yourself, well, I'm going to go through moments in life where I'm going to be disappointed. Let me at least prepare myself mentally. There's really nothing that you could do to prepare yourself for that.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the lessons that I learned.
What were things, for example, that were absolutely out of your control other than being in the foster system, being a foster kid?
Well,
during that season as a foster kid, what other things were
oh
outside
my
of your
God,
control?
I could tell you from the very beginning. I remember me and my brother were going home, was coming from school. And when we got to the house, there was about like 6 or 7 police cars right outside. So my first initial thought was
Somebody
somebody in
died.
my house got
Yeah.
murdered. Yeah. And when we got there, one of the policemen just grabbed me and my brother, didn't explain anything what was going on, uh, threw us in the cop car, and just drove us to a particular destination, which somewhere in Mass, it was about like an hour and 20 minutes away,
Jeez.
not answering any of our questions.
Just throw you in the car, start driving, and you don't even have any idea what's going on.
Exactly.
For an hour and 20 minutes.
For about an hour
roughly.
and 20 minutes, yeah. And so I remember when I got to the home where we were staying at, it was our first foster home. I didn't have any clothes. I was hungry. And I was so frustrated. I was scared. I didn't know what was going on. I peed on myself.
Wow.
And the woman who was taking care of us only had daughters. So for the week, I was wearing her daughter's clothes. So I'm still going to school the next day.
Wow.
And I remember it clear as day. I'm having a purple shirt, pink sweatpants, people making fun of me. And right then and there, you learn really quick, like, man, I didn't even have a choice of what to wear.
Jeez.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
On whether or not to give myself a timeout. Like, hey, I need rest. I need to reflect on what's going on. No one's explaining anything to me. I'm here. And it really felt like all of my decision making. And when you're a child, it's not like you have a plethora of decisions that you have to make.
True.
But the very little choices that I did have were no longer there. Like the simple thing of, hey, this is my Ninja Turtle t-shirt I'm gonna wear, or these pair of pants. I had absolutely no choice of the matter. And it really affected me. It really did. Because at that moment, right, I'm in a particular home and I'm like, all right, I'm staying with this woman. I don't know her name. And it really seems like she doesn't even care about me. And now the government is placing me in her hands. And it's tough. It's just like, what do you do in life when things that you love, you care about, right? Which in this point, it's my own life. It's me and my brother. It's in someone else's control and they could care less, right? You're in someone else's hands, or you're under someone else's guardianship and they could care less about you.
Yeah,
That's challenging.
That sounds very challenging. It just made me think, because that must have, for sure, and I cannot say I understand, I can only imagine, but that must have really affected your ability to trust.
Not only to trust, but it at least let me know that, okay, my parents weren't perfect, but I know that they love me. Just for the little things that we take for granted.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, right, we some people, when they go through hardships at home, they take the little things for granted. Something as simple as a meal, or just having clothes on your back.
I just want cereal right now. Yeah. You're just going open that box of cereal.
Yeah, and close that mastermind agenda on top of that. Take little things for granted.
Oh my God, that is incredible. And again, it's just so important, in my opinion, to understand these things, even for ourselves, because sometimes, our brain is designed to push down the painful. And you are a big proponent of soul healing. You are a big proponent of addressing those internal struggles, really letting what God help you work through those issues, because now I'm understanding, because you've been in very dark places yourself, and I think, and please elaborate on this, you understand the danger of not getting out of that darkness.
Yeah, and I think one of the dangers is making that place of darkness your home. And unfortunately, people become very comfortable in living in situations like that, where they've been in dark places for so long that they assume it as, all right, I'm going to be here forever. And we have to be very careful with that there is light at the end of the tunnel, you know? And one of the things that kind of helped me get out of those dark places was I had to learn to forgive, right? Forgive others, forgive those who hurt you. I had to learn how to make sure that I love myself, because it's when you go through rejection in life, it's very easy to hate yourself or dislike yourself. Because let's not get it twisted. There are going to be moments when you go through stuff, even though it's not your fault, you still blame yourself.
Yes. Absolutely.
That's something that's very real. And so to help you get out of those dark places, you have to learn how to love yourself. And then not only that, I think even just grieving. We think about grieving for those who are dead, and we forget to grieve for those people who are alive.
Yeah. You should preach that right now.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, but just
crazy. That's so true.
For people, those that are alive, and then not only that, just grieving for the image that you have of someone, right? Like
elaborate that. Yeah,
I'll elaborate. To me, my dad was a superhero, but in reality, my dad, even though he had good traits, he had a lot of character flaws. Let's just put it like this. And there was this image of my dad that I had of him, but in all reality, he wasn't that person. And so I was loving this false idol of who my dad was and not loving him for who he actually is.
But isn't it in everybody's case that we all think our parents are superhero until we understand their humanity?
Yeah, well, let's just put it like this. I think we go through different seasons with people, especially our parents. And in this specific conversation about my dad, there was one season he's a hero. There was another season he was a villain. And then the third season, you finally realize he's just a human being.
Yeah, I don't remember who I heard it from. I like what he's a billionaire. I think his name is Patrick. I watch his
PPD, Patrick Bet-David.
Yes,
he's awesome.
He says the stages of kids and the relationship with parents is first we idolize them.
Okay.
Then we demonize them.
Wow. Okay.
And then we humanize them.
Oh, see, that's very similar to what I said.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, that's so interesting, because I can then look back on myself and I'm like, oh my God, he's right. As a kid, I idolized both my parents, and then through the teenager years, like, they don't understand me, they don't know, they don't know me, they don't want me to have fun, they don't really want to see me, fulfill my potential. And then you understand, oh snap, like, now that I'm a parent, dude, I look back, oh my God, I look back and I just hold my daughter and I go like, wow, my mom had to go through this when I was sick. My daughter was sick these other days.
Oh my God, yeah.
She had to hold me like this. She couldn't sleep like this.
She had to give me medicine at
3 at 3 in the morning. Just go to work right after that, because you're responsible for this completely dependent, vulnerable, sensitive child, dude. And
it gives you a different perspective on love, doesn't it?
Oh my God. And you told me this, and you hear it from everybody else, but dude, when you experience it, when you're the one holding that child at freaking 2 a.m. in the morning, and you have to let your wife, in my case, sleep because she works earlier than you, man, it brought so many memories. And I get even a little emotional, because it's like all the things, going back to your point, that I took for granted, that it just looked it was magical to me. Food in the fridge, roof over my head. But now I know how much that costs. Now I know the effort, and it's just incredible.
And just being a parent, right? And even as an adult, because I'm a father of 2 sons, for those don't know me. And both of my parents are still alive, thank God, right? But even as a grown man myself, the need for affirmation, for attention,
Yeah, that you would think as an adult you don't need it, but
oh my God,
dude,
you need it so bad
oh my God.
to be loved, right? And I know my wife loves me, and I know my children love me, and I know my friends love me, but it's a different kind of love when you know that your mother and your father, the people who are responsible for creating you, to know that they love you, and man, it's just a different kind of love.
Yeah, dude. I mean, wow. So in that same context, I've I did social work for a few years,
Okay.
2 3 years, right? So I got to work with kids in the system. I got to work with kids that were dealing with truancy. I got to help kids that were dealing with drug abuse, sexual abuse, you name it. And one thing that I notice is, and maybe maybe you, because you also do your research and you read a lot, but there were certain kids that they were, I don't know how else to describe it, they were just wired to thrive. Like, regardless, everything is going literally wrong in their lives, but they're still, I don't know if it's just a need because they want attention, they want to be somebody. So their outlet, instead of trying to hang out with the homies and get drugs, is get good grades because that's what they find pride in. But I just saw kids that were driven to drive, and there were others that it didn't matter what kind of intervention you put in place, they couldn't get out of the slump. They couldn't get out of that vicious cycle. So, to you, in your own experience, what drove you? Because we're gonna transition into your professional journey now, and it could have been easy just to, I don't know, follow the steps of your folks.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you were exposed to people that were not doing good things, and you could have followed those steps. So walk me through that. How was that? And maybe that also leads into how you came to church and all that.
Definitely. Because just like you said, right, there are going to be some people that, regardless of their environment or circumstances that they go through in life, that they're just going to make it.
Yeah.
And then there are others that they have to be put in the right situation in order to succeed.
Yeah.
Right? We're all built differently. And I don't think one is better than the other, to be honest with you.
I agree.
I just think that we're just wired differently. In my particular situation, for me, is believe it or not, I'm very emotional. I'm a very emotional person. And I just don't like feeling a certain way. Right. And so to me, my thought process was, all right, I never want to feel this way again. I don't want to have these kind of experiences in life. I don't want my children to experience these kind of things. So I'm gonna try my best to be successful, right? So that's one thought. The other thought that I had too was, um, and I always wrestle with this, but I believed it was not here by accident. I'm here for a purpose. Don't know what that purpose is, but I at least owe it to myself to find out, right? So let me push myself to do well in areas where everybody says you got to be good at, right? You got to be good in school. You got to have good character. You got to make sure that you're a good friend. And I wasn't perfect in any of those things. I was a good student until I got to high school. I wanted to be a class clown, to be honest. And it was because
Can't imagine that.
yeah, it was because in middle school I was one of the smartest kids, right? I get to high school, everybody's smart, especially the high school that I was going to, and I just wanted people to love me. And it was just because of the fear of rejection that came up because of what I experienced before with the foster care system.
Wow.
And overall, motivations, they do change. But those were some of the things that drove me, was just the feeling of, hey, I don't want my kids to experience this. I have a purpose in life. I want to do well. I want to be successful. Those are the things that pushed me.
Yeah, I mean that that would do it. And I still find that amazing because now you work in, how would you describe what do you do for work? How would you describe what you do for work, and how did you get there?
Well, I'm a portfolio manager for a financial institution.
What's that? I
A
know
bank.
nothing. I know nothing about portfolio. I don't even know what portfolio means. So walk me through that.
Okay, I'm in commercial lending. So,
Ah.
people want to borrow money, but so do companies.
Mm-hmm.
And people have a particular reason why they want to borrow money.
Got it.
I work in the asset finance division.
Mm-hmm.
So you have companies that are looking to buy assets, right? Think of trucks, trailers, things of that sort.
Buildings,
Yeah.
real estate.
And so what I do is just like how people have a credit score,
Mm-hmm.
so do companies.
Got it.
I look at their financial statements and does it make sense for us
To
to lend them money and could they afford to pay us back?
Mm-hmm.
And so they gave me a portfolio or a bucket of companies that I manage that every now and then deals come up. I have to evaluate those deals. So that's what I do. And so I went to college. Shout out to Bryant University. Got my MBA there.
Come on, Brown.
Yeah.
Brian, I mean.
Brian, not
Brian.
Brown.
Come on,
Shout
Brian.
out to Brown too. I got a few friends that go there.
Please sponsor us. Keep going.
And so I got into business. It's funny, right? Because when I was growing up, I always wanted to be an astronaut or a lawyer, all that cool stuff. When I got to college, I was having some doubts. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I was just like, all right, let me just join business. It sounds good. It sounds cool. And I remember I was having conflict on, is this the right choice? And my mother, I was having a conversation with her. I said, Mom, I'm in business right now, but I really don't know what I want to do. She said, Papi, just finish what you started. When she said that to me, it was like a light went off.
Yeah. Simple, but effective.
And so I was going to school, and while I was going to school, I had different jobs, but majority of my jobs were at different banks.
Mm-hmm.
One thing led to another.
Just keep going.
Climbing, yeah.
I find it funny because as we struggle in the professional realm, in our professional life to discover what we want to do, and usually we, like in your case, it was like, you grew up sort of in the banking system. Most of your jobs were in the banking, so now it just makes sense that you went that way. My experience was a little different because I went to school for psychology and then I'm doing politics. So I don't know how that happened, but hey, that's a story for another podcast. How we struggle to find our niche, our thing in a professional life is also similar in our faith life, in a spiritual life. So I wonder, when you come to Christ, when you accept Christ, and maybe in another episode we can go to the of the many testimonies that you have, but you come to Christ, how do you figure out? How did Adolfo figure out his calling? How do you figure out that you were good with words, with communication, that you were called to preach, but also ultimately, when did you know that you were called to pastor, to become a pastor, to lead others, to take care of others? Because let me tell you, if I had a choice, if God came right now, he gave me a choice, what would you like to do in church? You know what I would pick? Sound system. I will be the sound guy.
I would be the cameraman.
I would not pick pastor. I would not pick the stage. So walk me through that. When do you accept Christ? How did it happen? And how do you figure out that was your thing? Because many people struggling today, people that may be listening to right now, and maybe you've encountered many people too, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what God called me to do. How do I figure out what to do in church? What's my calling? What was your experience? And Is there anything we can extrapolate from that for other people to find out what their calling is?
Yeah, I think there's so much there, right? Because even though talking about my career and then also talking about my ministry as a pastor, sometimes people want to combine both into one.
Yeah.
And that's not always going to be the case, right? Because at the end of the day, we all want to do something that's fulfilling. Now, when it came to me being called as a pastor, that's something that people have been telling me since I was a kid. That's not something that I wanted, right? And
Same.
it's not something that I wanted. I did it. You know, it's cool to look at somebody and be on the pulpit and see them preach and articulate words well. It's another thing to actually be in the job, be with people, and as you know, dealing with people is not easy. Excuse me. And so, since I was a kid, there would be numerous people that would tell me, "Hey, you know, I've been praying for your life. I know that you've been called to be a pastor." The first people to ever tell me was a married couple by the name of Virginia and Elliot Feliciano. Virginia was actually my Sunday school teacher.
Wow.
So she was the first. And there were others that would just repeat it. Different people that didn't talk to each other, that would just let me know that was my calling. I didn't come to Christ, meaning I didn't come to be saved until I was 18 years old. 18 years old is when I gave my life to the Lord. I didn't start preaching until I was 23. And just because you preach doesn't mean that you're called to be a pastor.
Come on. That's keep going.
Yeah. So I my ministry really began to manifest itself through preaching when I was around 23. And as I continued to, study the word, go to Bible Institute, things like that, God would just confirm, to a point where people even started calling me Pastor Adolfo, even though I wasn't a pastor yet. And then I prayed. I was like, God, if this is something that you really want me to do, because honestly, I don't want it. This is not something that I want. Just continue to open doors and guide me through it. Because I'm gonna say yes to you as much as I hate it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say yes to you. And to make a long story short, that's what happened.
Wow.
That's what happened. So I became an associate pastor for God's Voice Ministries. Shout out to GVM.
Come on. Pastor Carlos.
Yeah, Pastor
Cynthia.
Carlos, shout out. When I was, I'm 38 now. So when I was 31 years old, that's when I became an associate pastor. And I wasn't married yet. And so, because I didn't want to be a pastor either until I got married. I strongly recommend that.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I strongly recommend that. But I met my wife not too long after that anyways, so things worked out.
And even though and just on that point on the marriage part, even though I was a youth leader before marriage, I even recommend if you're going to be youth leader or youth pastor, that it should be a married couple rather than a single person.
Yeah, I
strongly recommend it. Like I would have, if I could do it again, I would wait to lead other young people until I'm married. It's just something about marriage that makes it so much better, safer. It makes you wiser because you are struggling every day and mature every day.
Marriage has a way of building your character.
Oh yeah, for sure. That is so good. So you were told, you were confirmed, you feel in your spirit, you told God that you're gonna say yes. But since we're in between of the podcast, we need, to learn a few things. Why? This is for my entrepreneurial minded people that listen to this podcast. Why did you decide to not do full-time ministry? Because for the longest time, that was the trend. Everybody's trying to do full-time ministry.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to make it, with that lead pastor that just preaches on Sundays and lead a church and then has all the benefits and all the salaries and the stuff. and all that stuff, why pursue a professional career and at the same time, with the same intensity, pursue your calling? And how does that work with family? You mentioned you're a father of two, married. How do you juggle all that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So number one, I didn't want to live off the altar.
Mm.
I didn't.
Is it wrong to do it?
No.
Okay.
No, I think living off the altar is not a bad thing.
Okay.
That's not just something I didn't want to do that.
Okay.
I went to school, I educated myself.
Just making sure you were not throwing shade at some full-time pastors out there that may be listening to you.
Much love to you guys.
Okay.
I went to school, I educated myself, I pursued a particular career. I make decent money. And so there's a lifestyle that comes with that I wanted to live, and I want to work. I love working, right? So that's one. Number two, my congregation isn't large enough to support the senior pastors and then the associate pastor, right? So I don't want to put a burden on the congregation. I don't think that's the right thing to do.
They should.
Yeah.
No, biblically. I'm not gonna get in trouble. I'm not gonna get in trouble. Keep going.
No, but we're but on a good day, we're about like 140, 150 strong on a really good day. On average, though, there's about like 120 of us there. And so right now, based on the income that comes in, right, it wouldn't be enough to pay the pastors, the senior pastors, and myself.
And church expenses.
And then the expenses, yeah. And so, and then I feel called to my congregation. And so I wouldn't want to leave the church unless God called me out.
Got it.
But I wouldn't want to leave the church to pursue a salary, because then I feel like I would be chasing money and not chase the purpose that God has for me, right? Which is something I don't want to put myself in. And so, and then how I manage the time is exactly that. I've been used to it, kind of, in a sense of, because I was going to school full time, I was working full time, I was going to church full time, and then I had a relationship on top of that.
Yeah.
So managing all of those things, you learn how to manage your time well. And so I was able to work through that. And
I don't know though, because I'm still struggling with managing my time, but
no, I'm actually doing pretty well.
Okay.
Because I set healthy boundaries.
Got it.
There are certain days where I'm just not going to pick up the phone. I'm going to be with my wife and my children. I'm not the only person in the church that could help you out. There are plenty of people there that could help you out on that particular
That's
day.
so important.
So unless it's a 911 situation, which in most cases it's not.
It's not. Let's be real. It's not.
It's not. Then I'm gonna be with my wife and kids. And then not only that too, since I work at a bank, I have banker's hours, which is great. So I'm in at 8 o'clock, out by 4:30. I have the option to work remote, so some days I do, and because of that, I'm able to manage my time well.
So do you really feel you're being effective on both your professional and your spiritual calling?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Now, if God, if I were to bring this to prayer and I feel being moved by the Lord to let go of my job, then I would certainly do that. I would have a conversation with my wife. And
how many angels will have to come down for you to receive that confirmation?
Man, they would have to tap me on the shoulder in the middle of the night. I would need a whole legion. But in all actuality, because in my job too, the Lord uses me to help others. One of the things that I love doing is I love volunteering at high schools and teaching financial literacy.
That's so good, and that's so needed. Oh my God.
And I understand preaching the good news, the sharing the gospel. It's key. That definitely comes first. But there are other needs that people have that you could help meet them right where they're at. And so I want to be used in those areas as well. And so I,
That is
I
so
enjoy
good.
I enjoy what I do.
That's so good because that speaks also to this misconception of ministry is just what we do on the altar, and worship is just slow songs, and it's much more than that. Worship is our life. Our life should be our worship, our sacrifice to God. And God can use you in accounting as much as He can use you leading a worship session.
Listen, if preaching on the altar is about 10% of what a pastor does.
That is so true. That is so true.
And so the people on the people on the benches or on their seats, they look at that and they think, all right, he has to prepare the sermon.
That's just the end result.
Yeah, that's his job. That's the majority of what he does. I'm like, no, that's the minority of what a pastor
Oh yeah.
does.
What about leadership building, coordinating,
Community outreach.
community outreach, the budget, all the financial, all the admin stuff? It is insanity, and it actually leads me to my next question, because people underestimate the power of serving in church and the skills that you can develop in church that can actually translate into the marketplace. Could you speak to that? What are things that you have developed in church that you might be using in your day-to-day work?
Yeah, definitely. Some of the things that come to mind would be business planning.
You learned that in church? Wow.
Yeah, you learn that in church in a sense of, right, because you got to set a mission.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have a vision. Why do you exist?
Come on now.
Those things matter. All right, you have to build others.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think this is a quote from Ronald Reagan, and I believe he said something to this effect. He said, "Great leaders don't necessarily do great things, but they help cause others to do great things."
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so
That's tweetable.
yeah, that is. Or X. It's X.
It's X.
And so you got to be able to build people up. You got to be able to communicate effectively, right? Because if you're going to be on a pulpit for 30 minutes or even longer, you got to make sure that your congregants are not falling asleep when you're speaking. And then on top of that, that they're actually learning when you are speaking. So be able to communicate effectively, right? Community outreach.
Yeah.
It's huge. Community planning, family planning. Shout out to Pastor Carlos Ramirez. He's the senior pastor at our church. I remember I seen all of this in one day. Okay. He helped tutored someone on their math homework. There was a therapy session and another, right after that. Then he had to lead church, right? Lead the service in terms of he worshiped that day because the worshiper was out sick. And then on top of that, he gave a message. And then right after that, he was, bonding with his children. Like, think about how many hats he wore.
Yeah.
In the span of 90 minutes.
Yeah.
That
sounds so cool and tiring at the same time.
It's cool, it's tiring, but think about how many skill sets you're developing or that you need to develop in order to be effective. Right? And so, leading a church teaches you so much. And I know people don't like talking about it as a business.
Yeah.
Right? But there are some organizational skills that you need in order to run an effective and sound
and there
church.
are many business aspects in church that we cannot deny. Like, you need to pay rent, you need to pay a mortgage if you own a building, you need to have an onboarding process for new people. Like, that's your HR right there. Like, you need to budget. Like, all of these are business like transactions and systems and processes that you have to implement in your church to run effectively.
And let's be honest, right? Because in Christian churches, unfortunately, people have seen a lot of abuse, especially when it comes to finances.
So true.
So how could you ask for money Because at the end of the day, right, it's based on a giving system,
Yeah.
on how the lights and everything else are being paid. How could you communicate effectively and inspire your people to give? Right now, you could teach them what the Bible says, and you could teach them about tithing and how they tithed in the Old Testament and how they tithed in the New Testament. And you could go deep into all that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, right, what can you do as an organization, as a church, to inspire your people to give and then to trust you to continue to give?
The stewardship, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm on, as we wrap up, I'm gonna throw a curveball in there, right? Because nowadays we are in a value driven society,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes as leaders of organizations, as leaders of churches, we forget that people come to church because they find some type of value in that. Whether it is community, whether it is learning, whether it is just a safe place, they find value. They come because they find a value in there. How important is it to keep that in mind, in your opinion, as a pastor, to make sure that everything you're doing, whether it's a new initiative, whether it is the way you do outreach, whether it is your preachings, your sermons, how important it is to really ask God and analyze objectively, is this bringing value to people? Because I think that's the key, right? Beyond, and it goes along with the vision. People have to know like what we want to accomplish as a church. Beyond that, how do we add value to our people beyond just I want to pray for you, which is huge. But I think, I don't know, maybe just me, but I think we need to start thinking as leaders beyond that. People come because they find a value, and have to make sure as a leader that I'm giving value.
Yeah, one of the things that we try to practice at our church is it's extremely important to pray for people, but I want to be an answer to a prayer.
Come on.
You know,
I can go to sleep now.
Yeah.
Elaborate, please.
Like, for example, it's one thing to know that someone doesn't have food in their fridge and you pray for provision. It's another thing to say, brother, sister, I know you don't have any food. Let me take you food shopping. Right? Totally different.
Completely.
And I think, don't get me wrong, prayer is extremely important. And there are going to be moments where that's the only option you got.
Yeah.
It's just like, all right, I can't help you. All I could do is this. But in those other situations where I can help, and even though it may take a little bit of sacrifice, let me put that into practice and do that. And let me teach others in the congregation to do that as well, to lead by example. Because that's what a great leader does.
That's so good, yeah.
Is they lead by example. And so what we try to do in our church is we try to be an answer to a prayer with the understanding that everybody has a need. And the only reason why I'm in church today is because God met me right where I was.
Yeah,
He met me in my need. And I always think first is spiritual in the sense that, you know, we all need reconciliation with God. We all need Christ to be that bridge to bring us to God the Father.
Amen.
Right? So it's always going to be a spiritual need first. But then there are going to be other needs too. You know, I know we was talking about my childhood story earlier. You know how many people come to the church fatherless? Their dads were not involved in their lives whatsoever, or their mom, or some people, if they don't spend Thanksgiving at church, they're not going to have a Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
Some simple things like that, just meeting them right where they are. And so to figure out the needs of the people, I think it's extremely important to know your people, right? And I'm not saying here I know everybody in the church in a personal, deep level, but at the end of the day, you know, I have some sort of idea of generally these what the needs are. And then, like you said, presenting some sort of value, right? I think it's going to be valuable to learn lessons that the Bible teaches, to be good stewards of your finances,
Yeah.
to love your husband,
Yeah.
to love your wife,
Amen.
to honor your children, to be there for your community, to be a light in the midst of darkness, right? To honor God and love him with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, to love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? When you practice a lot of these key things that the Bible teaches, not only are you going to have a better life, right? But you're also going to make other people's lives just a little bit better.
So true.
And it doesn't mean that you're not going to go through suffering. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have hard times. God didn't promise you a superstar life. He didn't do that. As a matter of fact, he promised the opposite. He said, you are going to go through trials and affliction for my name's sake, right? But there are some things, if we put it into practice, that could help us make our lives just a little bit easier. So that's the kind of value, besides bringing salvation, right? That's the kind of value that I'm trying to spread, not only to my church, but to the community that we're in, and hopefully to the nations.
That's so good. Adolfo, just thank you so much for your time. I was edified. I hope the listeners are also edified. And if you're listening to this, maybe you're, you need to think about your profession in a different light. Maybe you are called to do big changes with what you do right now at work, with the skills that you have or the skills that you're trying to learn. And hey, glory to God if you've been called to the stage, if you've been called as a full-time pastor. But ultimately, we all have the duty to add value to each other, right? Apostle Paul said that the whole reason why we are a body, because the body can edify itself. It can help each other, build each other up. So we're putting this community because I have things that can help others and other people have things that I can learn, be edified from. Once again, thank you so much.
Could I just add
Yes.
one last gem? It's not too late to learn a skill. Don't beat yourself up because you felt like you haven't been successful in life just
Come on.
yet. There's still plenty of time to change things around, to get things right. So self-reflect, pray, plan, get around people who have been successful, who have done it. Maybe they could give you some nuggets along the way, and put in the work, because it's going to be hard work, but you could do it.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you so much. And success just looks differently for everybody. Sometimes we look out at somebody else and we compare ourselves, and it's impossible not to do it. But then we have to remind ourselves, I'm not Adolfo. I'm not El Hokage. I'm Anthony.
Well, comparison to me is not a bad thing.
It's not.
But when you couple it with insecurity or jealousy,
I'm gonna have to do a
things,
part 2, man.
Then comparison could be a real bad thing if you
For
with those.
sure.
But sometimes comparison the right way could be a great thing. It's just like, oh man, Tony is doing this great. What could I learn from him? Or maybe, you know what? That's his strength. That's not mine. Let me go another route.
Yeah.
And so sometimes those comparison could be a good thing.
So good. So good. This was Pete on the podcast. We hope to see you next time. Please, please, please rate this episode. It helps us tremendously. Comment, share it. I want to see you next time. Thank you again, Adolfo.
Thank you.